Hi beautiful Super Soul Sisters. Today we're going to talk about dash and stash shoes. This is all around hoarding. Any hoarders amongst us? And if so, or maybe, and again I would be saying, let's be straight up honest here. Some of us might hoard to a certain degree, like we might have a propensity for collecting a certain thing, but we're not really, you go, I'm not actually one of those hoarders that you see on TV. But are you showing signs and early stages of like collecting and not being able to let go? Now, therein lies the secret right there. This is part of an attachment style that you will have learned if you have a leaning to be one of these people. And that is where, if you think about it, part of our early development is learning to let go as little kids, right? So when you're a wee baby, you hang on to your bottle and you're drinking, and then, at the end of it, you let it go because it's empty, right? And you don't need. Now, if you have a belief system that maybe, say, like that bottle gets taken out of your hand sooner than what you would like, or you don't get the bottle when you actually want it, just an example. I mean, this is not a specific thing, but it's a specific example, but there's just so that you can understand. If mum or the parent or the caregiver doesn't give it to you, and you've been crying and eventually you get given the bottle, you want to hang on to it because you're worried that it's not going to come back again as well. Hey, so this is part of an attachment style. So I've just finished writing an e-guide on that, which I'm now getting designed. And by the time this all goes live, when you join the Facebook community group, the VICKI JANE Facebook community group, you get that e-guide for free for joining me as a member. Really gold. It's absolute gold. You want to read it anyway, just to go, oh my gosh, it sheds so much light on the types of different people that we are. There's 4 different styles. You're going to definitely be one of them. Now, the hoarding type is in that really early sort of stage, and it is that whole thing of just not being able to let go, or when if you have a place of scarcity, like, quite often, like, it wasn't uncommon in the Second World War, probably in the First World War too, because there were sanctions on food and whatnot. Hoarding became a thing because you didn't know when your next meal was going to be coming in, right? You could get bombed. There was like, it's war, the place could get taken over. And I remember, I mean, this is a classic example. And, I dare I say, my family has kind of come up through the hoarding route, simply because of the war days. So my parents were much older than me. And my mother grew up in the Second World War. And she reminisces on stories of how they grew up on this piece of land. It was in Devon, and it was stunning. It was lovely. It was an old rickety kind of building, but it was really like granny, grandpa, grandfather's clocks and whatever. So it suited that. But they had this big backyard that was full of like orchards, full of apples and peaches, and actually I don't even know if they had peaches. They definitely had apples. They had a lot of blackberries and blueberries. Anyway, so it was so that they could feed their family. And grandpa, my granddad, he used to make furniture for the Queen, which is a completely, I don't know why I even told you that, it's got no relevance whatsoever, but he used to make the bread at home. They had to make it because there wasn't enough bread. Like they got a little coupon books, and with their coupon books they would then go and get their loaf of bread. I think it was like they got sanction to one loaf of bread per week. Now that's not enough to feed a family of their size, so they would make it. And he was known for my gran was really well known for making Cornish pasties. So she made her pies. She didn't go down to the shop and get it, and you use whatever. And they would grow the potatoes that went in the Cornish pasties, they grow the carrots that went in the Cornish pasties, you know. So this is my sort of thing. And then I grew up in Zimbabwe. My mother learnt that. So we had a big piece of land where we grew. Now we've got a larger piece of land, and our whole backyard is like an orchard. Now that is a genetic throwback, if you think about it, in a good way. But it's not the hoarding capacity. The hoarding side of it comes in whenever there's a perception of scarcity. I suddenly find that I start stocking up because, you know, I think it's genetically predisposed. I'd love to know if there's a hoarding gene because I think it's been passed on. But it'll be like I'll buy a bigger packet of rice or a bigger tins that can actually last longer, or jars of stuff, you know, that can actually last longer. You just have to have a look at, you know, what was that whole toilet thing going on during the pandemic? Everybody was buying bog roll. No, it's just like so random. Now, truth, Bob, no word of a lie. Every time there's a flood, we had a flood recently, we had some random tornado, which I didn't even know we got in New Zealand. And suddenly toilet paper was gone off the shelves, limited to one lot per person. I'm going, why? Like, you know, it was on the top of North Island. The rest of the country was fine, but suddenly bog roll was sold out, you know. And it's that panic, it's that scarcity mentality that, oh, we're not going to have enough, so quickly you got to hoard. So dash and stash shoes are exactly that. Now, where it becomes an issue is, again, the level of to which. So a little bit different when you actually do need to do it. But, you know, and it's basically filling a hole. It's thinking, I have not got enough. I'm not enough. The scarcity mentality of, I need to have more in order to feel safe and secure. Now, that whole attachment style that you have with that and how you got brought up will severely impact that, because, you know, I know dealing with one who was struggling a bit with hoarding, which is the main reason they had come to me, and it was because they came from a large family, and that particular person in that family, there wasn't enough to go around amongst all the kids. So, man, when you got hold of whatever you got hold of, you flipping well ate it, man. Like, you ate it, you drank it, you did whatever. And as a result, they, you know, again, lived through the war days, and so had to make stuff with whatever was left over, as we did in Zimbabwe as well. So it was not uncommon. I remember, this is just a university, I remember one friend, oh gosh, he was funny, and his bike broke down, his motorbike broke down, and he used an old deodorant canister for the exhaust pipe, because his exhaust pipe had fallen off, and one of the gear sticks things had broken, and he had put a coat hanger in there and wired it up, as you do, right? But it's not uncommon in Africa to see that. Like, you know, the Africans will make a plan. And there's an upside to that. You know, there is an upside, but also not so safe if you're probably riding a bike with a coat hanger on probably the gears, Lord knows. But the dash and stash shoes comes into play where you're buying or overbuying. And, you know, quite often it's a specific thing as well. So my great aunt, not great aunt, my aunt on my mother's side, classic example. She landed up staying in the UK during the war, and my mother landed up going to Africa, and so the family did get split up because, you know, they had evacuees to keep them safe, and they did a test, and only the intelligent, really smart ones who passed this test actually got shipped off. The ones that weren't. And unfortunately, my mother's sister didn't quite make the grade, so she ended up staying behind. So she was left with all the sanctions and with all the coupons and the stress. So she ended up marrying an American army guy, and they moved to the States. Absolute hoarder, like big time. So I remember us going to visit her, and oh, I was in my element because it was amazing. She had this big thing, and she had a lot of dolls, and she would make a lot of those Poro clowns and dolls, and it was like heaven for a kid. Like, but it was a huge room, and it was just these dolls and these amazing dresses. She was really quite the seamstress. Again, a learnt skill because you couldn't buy clothes. You had to make them, and she was quite a beauty queen. So she landed up making a lot of her stuff, and then landed up doing it for her kids, and then for their dolls, and then that's how that came about. Now that's just the dolls. So one whole room, and it was a big room all the way to the roof, several shelves, and it was just amazing. I loved it. She had cats like you wouldn't believe, at least 13 cats. She had a thing for shoes. Now this is how bad it got. They actually dug out the basement of their house, which I'm sure would have compromised the infrastructure of the actual house, thinking about it now. But the entire basement was full of shoes. So she would go shopping, and she'd see a bargain, and she'd buy them. And quite often, my mum said she went to visit the one time, and they hadn't even been unpacked. They were still in the bags. Okay, so they had bags, she had boxes. There were shoes that didn't even fit her. Most of the shoes she hadn't actually worn. Now you've got to be going, what's that all about? Where is that coming from? She had this need, and this is the challenge that you have, or I find that hoarders tend to have, is that they buy it and it's a temporary reprieve. It gives them a temporary sense of satisfaction. They get a little bit of a high, and then they go, oh, it hasn't quite filled the hole. I better go out and get some more. And so they do some more, and they do some more, and they do some more. And I've just had a friend who's just had the misfortune of having her flat in the UK rented out to a hoarder, and man, did he trash that place. You know, he couldn't throw anything away. She showed me pictures, and it just made my hair curl. They couldn't even open. You could open the door, but immediately there was a big pile of rubbish. You couldn't even throw the rubbish away. So there are those real hoarders out there, aren't there? And the stuff was, it was rotting food. It was stuff on the bed. The toilet wasn't flushing properly, and he just wouldn't allow anybody in there. So that is now that real extreme where it's unhealthy, right? So they had to go in with hazmat suits on and everything to clear that place out. As she said, it was really out there. And, so you obviously get degrees of dash and stash shoes. But, if you've got a tendency to overbuy, or you know that you've got a particular thing that you overbuy in, because quite often I find that hoarders do that. Like, they quite often have a specific something, quite often, but sometimes they just, if they collect stuff, it's just like, oh, and I need more, and I need more. And that's the thing. It's like there's something inside that they feel that needs to be filled, and that really does need addressing. And we can do it on a little level and on a higher level. And of course, it's that whole scale thing again. If you're the hoarder with the hazmat suit kind of guy, then you really do need some professional help, okay? But if you're the person who's like, do you know what, I know a person who just, loves the shoes, buys a lot of shoes, but it's not over the top, but does spend quite a bit on, and it's more driven by, the Gucci girl stuff. It's more about, it looks good, she likes the shoes, but it's not out of control. So, where are you if you are on the scale, and then start going, oh, actually that makes sense, and you start connecting the dots, don't you? So I don't know, maybe you know somebody. If you do, share a story. I'd love to hear yours. That would be fantastic. You can do that in the Facebook group. You can type it up in the comments in the YouTube channel if you want to do that, rather. And yeah, share some interesting stories. But it is driven from the why. Why is that happening? And that's more of my concern. It's like, what's sitting in behind it? Because this is the whole thing. It's like, are those really, we don't really want dash and stash shoes in the closet, burns a hole in the pocket. And yeah, you know, it's not really filling the hole in a healthy way, is it? So we need to work from the inside out rather, don't we? So yeah, you know, hope you found that useful. If you did, please like, share, subscribe if in the YouTube channel, and yeah, please, you know, comment or you know, let me know some thoughts if you're on the Facebook. Okay, your shoes, your path, your way. Okay, namaste.